If a major wrestling video game is released today, it's going to be based on some licensed property. Chances are it's the annual WWE game or some offshoot, maybe TNA or AAA putting on a random game, or something involving The Simpsons or rappers. Nobody, outside possibly small developers, puts out games that feature wrestling with made-up wrestlers. In the last 10 years, there have been Rumble Roses and World Wrestling Championship, and maybe some more, but that's about it. And I don't count the Fire Pro games, as they were based on actual wrestlers, even if they had to change the names. It didn't used to be this way. In fact, during the 8-bit, 16-bit, and arcade eras, there were tons of wrestling games centered on made-up wrestlers. Sure, their characters would sometimes be based on actual wrestlers, like the myriad of Road Warrior clones we've seen, but they weren't officially tied into any other property. Probably because video games were still relatively new, and the idea of a wrestling video game was pretty novel, so developers felt they didn't need to spend money on any kind of a license. But in 1996, Power Move Pro Wrestling was released for the PlayStation, one of the last non-property wrestling games. Okay, that's not completely true. The game is based on Toukan Ratsuden, a New Japan Pro Wrestling game first released in, well, Japan. Activision left movesets intact, but came up with new appearances and names for all the wrestlers. So the vast majority of the US audience, this was a brand new wrestling game. I got a lot of requests for this one, and now that I've played it, I understand why. It's a fun and very quirky game. The wrestlers themselves work on two levels. New Japan had a ton of awesome wrestlers in the mid-90s, and a game featuring Masahiro Chono, Keiji Muto, and Junya Hashimoto is okay by me. And the new characters it came up with include the Egyptian Conniption, King Og, and the alien Area 51. So this game didn't take itself too seriously. Plus Riki Choshu being renamed Irish Danny McGee, that's funny. The action takes place in 3D, and I think Power Move was the first 3D wrestling game, and if it wasn't, it was still an early one. And it's worth noting it came out almost a year before WCW vs. NWO World Tour, and everything that impressed us in that game, namely the variety of moves and the freedom allowed by 3 dimensions, is present here. Start up a match and you get this amazing introduction from the ring announcer.
Single match, 30 minutes, in the blue corner, at 6'2", 257 pounds, he's the guy who gets all the ladies and some of the men, Lance Duloc!
He's so bombastic he makes Gavin Loudspeaker seem sedate in comparison. He also gives an intro to referee Rathburn Sally. Some indie ref needs to steal that name pronto. Here's how you play. You have strikes, submissions, and grapples at your disposal, and the game works on a rock, paper, scissors engine. So grapples override strikes, submissions override grapples, and strikes override submissions. So you can't just repeat moves throughout a match, and the game forces you to mix up your offense a bit. We're used to wrestlers getting specials in the Aki series. If you string together enough moves, you become unstoppable for a brief period. But it works the opposite way in Power Move. If you take a beating long enough, your name will start flashing and you'll enter Rush mode, where you'll be stronger for a bit and also be able to execute special moves. It's a little weird to be rewarded for getting your ass kicked, but it helps even things out if you're having trouble. Controls are smooth. For an only 3D game, it's handled extremely well, and you can maneuver your wrestler wherever you want him to be without any problems. My only complaint is that the hit detection on downed opponents can be a bit wonky. I'll often come off the top rope or try a standing senton and crash and burn for no reason. Also, Rathburn Sally is super strict about rope breaks. You pretty much have to be in the dead center of the ring for it to count. There are a ton of quirks about the game, in no particular order. The difficulties are easy, medium, difficult, and wow. In the Japanese version, they were training, sparring, strong, and cement. There's the bulldog in the logo for no particular reason. There's a timer that goes super fast. Make sure you set the limit for 60 minutes, as most matches are going at least 20 to 30. And if your match does go the time limit, you have the option of having the winner decided on who did better, kind of like in an MMA fight. The options menu allows you to set your viewpoint. You can basically have one for the lower deck or one from the upper deck where the wrestlers just look smaller. If you have the R2 or L2 buttons, the camera will change 90 degrees, which is somewhat unfortunate as the L1 and R1 buttons are the taunts. and you're likely to give yourself whiplash changing the camera angles by mistake. If you pause the game and tap select, you can play in slow motion for whatever reason. And you can actually save your best matches to a memory card and watch them over and over. But the options are fairly limited. There's no tag mode, which is disappointing. But you can set up tournaments and round-robin leagues, or go through everyone and win the PPW title. Besides, as I said before, it's better to have a game with few options that's fun to play, instead of a stinker with plenty of game modes. Power Move Pro Wrestling is a pretty underrated game. You can snag it easily for a few bucks. It's not the deepest game, but it was a pioneer in 3D wrestling, and actually was the basis for the SmackDown games, since Ukes was involved with both, although the engine was modified a bit for SmackDown. But we'll get to that later on. Till then, thanks for watching, and remember, the winner is you.
いつだって同じ場所に泊まりたくない Oh yeah 誰だって
When 15 minutes is not enough for you, go to the brand new interactive PZWrestling.com. Catch up on episodes you may have missed, check out exclusive photos and videos on our Facebook, and join in on the conversation on Twitter and get a free DVD. For all that and much more, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, PZWrestling.com. It's a .com.